conference will now be recorded.
Reason we're celebrating Happy Valentine's Day this week, guys. Are you recording? Should I wait? Okay. Okay. So, the first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the previous meetings, the regular board meeting, and then we had a special meeting, January 30th.
Sure. I move to approve the minutes of the monthly meeting held on January 12th and the special meeting held on January 30th, 2026, as drafted.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And I guess David's online, right? Or on the phone? Oh, okay. So the next thing on the agenda is a variance for 138 Hesketh Street.
Okay, this is case number A8790. It is a variance application filed by Mr. Adam Bernard and Ms. Elizabeth Levy of 138 Hesketh Street to construct a second-story addition, which would match the first floor existing garage width that currently encroaches 6 inches into the west side yard. The village code side yard setback is 7 feet from the side property line. There are no applicable covenants for the property that state a side setback. The existing first story of the residence encroaches 6 inches into the 7-foot west side yard, resulting in a distance between the residence and the property line of 6 feet and 6 inches. The second story addition that is proposed would encroach the same distance of 6 inches into the 7-foot west side yard setback and would enlarge the length of that encroachment by 2 feet and 9 1/2 inches. The existing wall facade of the residence will not change. The applicant states that the strict enforcement of the current 7-foot side yard setback requirement would prevent the property owner from achieving an architecturally balanced and functionally appropriate front addition that aligns with the existing garage. Without maintaining the existing encroachment along the building line, the owner would be forced to either, 1, construct an architecturally awkward and visually disjointed addition that steps inward from the existing garage wall, creating an irregular facade, or 2, forego the addition entirely, preventing reasonable improvements to the home's functionality and architectural character, and states that the legal non-conforming condition predates the current owner and is not self-created. To date, no correspondence has been received either in support or opposition to the application.
And you can see up there.
Hey, Shayna?
Quite like something we've recently improved.
I think so.
Okay. Hi, David.
Hey, Shayna?
I went by and took a look at that today because one of my neighbors, the neighbors on the other side of Grafton for me back up.
Hello?
As near as I could tell, would you agree that from the back of the house on Grafton Street, that they wouldn't maybe even see any difference?
Not for this portion of the addition. There are some additions that they're doing that are approved administratively.
Shayna?
But this portion, right, no, they would not be able to see almost none of it.
Let's just pause for a second to make sure that David can hear us.
Yeah, Mr. Winstead, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Okay, so this is not unlike a recent addition we've
Yeah, and
discussed.
this is a pretty modest addition by the standards of some that I've seen around here. So I certainly couldn't imagine that this is one you'd want to, a hill you'd want to die on if you thought that we were doing too many of these particular things. But with all the previous approvals that we've had for similar situations, I think this one's pretty easy.
Does anyone have any comments? A motion?
I move to approve the variance request in case 8790 on the basis that the evidence presented, including the staff report and case synopsis, demonstrates that the applicable requirements for approval of the variance have been met. Staff is directed to draft a decision based on this evidence, including findings of fact and conclusion, approving the variance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. So we can
Aye.
move on to the treasurer's report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have nothing to add to the report.
Great. So we can move on to the Financial Review Committee's report. Welcome. Always fun to have you here.
Well, it's always interesting and useful to come and appreciate the many works that are done by so many people to keep our village running. So as the chair of the Financial Review Committee, I have the pleasure of shortly introducing Mr. Robert Diss of Lindsay and Associates to present to you the draft version of the audit for fiscal year 2025, prepared by the independent auditing firm Lindsay and Associates. I wish to thank Ms. Davis Cook and Mr. Produce and Mr. Crockett for their work and for their assistance and availability for the committee's review of this document. I also wish to acknowledge my committee colleagues, Gail Feldman, Clark Camper, and Kristen Donahue. And I want to thank Mr. Diss and his colleagues as well. And at this time, I believe he's online and is ready to proceed with reviewing the audit.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
If you're there, you can go ahead and take us through a walkthrough of the draft audit.
Okay, I will. Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name's Bob Diss. I'm the
We need you to
level-
be right into your microphone.
Better bring it closer. How's that? Is that a little better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I've got the audit in front of me for the Chevy Chase Village for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025. I'm assuming you've got it in front of you as well, or you've read it and memorized it. As always, page 1 is the audit opinion letter, and it gives the village a clean opinion. It goes on for 3 pages because lawyers, and the clean opinion means we give reasonable assurance that the statements are not materially misstated. And it will be drafted, I believe it's the 29th of January. You've probably got an undated copy right now. And we'll file it just as soon as we get the signed management rep letter, which I'm told will happen almost immediately. Beginning on page 4 through usually it's page 10. Page 10 is the management's discussion and analysis. That's not written by us, but it's written by committee, but also Dimitri and Shana. And it tells the reader whatever they wanted the reader to know, comparing the current year, meaning 25, to the prior year, 24, and giving any reasons for differences between the two. If you look at page 5, that's a pretty good table that shows the 2 different years together. The one thing that I put a little note next to is property and income taxes. Notice in 25 it went way down, and I think that was due almost entirely due to income tax, which is, as you all know, very volatile. The actual financial statements begin on page 11, and it's important to know there are 2 sets of financial statements because they're on 2 different bases of accounting. The first set, which is pages 11 and 12, are on the full accrual basis of accounting. They take everything in the village into account, including fixed assets, long-term debt, depreciation, expense, things of that nature. The balance sheet is there on page 11. The related income statement is on page 12. It starts with expenses to the left, and then revenue by department going across to the right, and general revenues down in the lower right-hand corner. And on that basis of accounting, your equity decreased by about $780,000. The other set of financial statements are on pages 13 to 14. And these are on the modified accrual basis. They only take current assets, current liabilities into account. There's no fixed assets, long-term debt, depreciation, nothing like that. So it's closer to cash, but not quite. There on page 13, you see the balance sheet, assets on top, liabilities, equity on the bottom, for the two funds, general fund and the special revenue fund, and of course the total. Now, what's the difference between this and the other balance sheet? Over to the right is a reconciliation, and it's always going to be capital assets and long-term items, things like that. The related income statement is on page 14. And this again, modified accrual, only current assets, current liabilities. You've got revenues on top, liabilities on the bottom. And you'll see that on that basis of accounting, your equity decreased by only about 100,000. Whereas last year it went up by about 1.1 million. So it more than evens out. And again, there's the reconciliation over to the right. On pages 15 and 16 are the fiduciary the fiduciary statements for the defined contribution trust fund. There you have this is not the village's money. It belongs to the employees. But because of your fiduciary responsibility, we have to include it. There you have it. The notes to the statement begin on page 17, and most of these are going to be boilerplate, same stuff as last year. So if you enjoyed them last year, you'll love it this year. I'll just hit a few highlights. I think we go up to page, note 3, which is on page 27. Head to 27, you'll see what the village's investments are. You've got about 18.5 million investments, and separately is the 5 million for the employees. It's not the villages. And you can see it's an MLGIP, certificates of deposit, and treasury bills money market. Note 6 shows the capital assets and depreciation. You added about 1.5 million of equipment. We calculated about 400,000 of depreciation expense. The defined contribution plan is explained a little bit in note 7. Note 9 talks about the wind case, which I'm not going to go into that. I'm sure you all know about that. And the only other long-term liabilities are in note 10, there on page 32, and that's your accrued sick leave. And I'll also point out that this year we're required to put in accrued sick leave in addition to vacation and comp time. New accounting grounds. And with that, we'll skip to page 36 where we show original and final budget, compare it to the actual by department. And then starting on page 37, we kind of go line by line, same thing. The biggest difference I pointed out here to myself is on page 37, state income tax. It went down by about 700,000 this year compared to last year. Everything else was comparable, we'll say. Now, did we have any questions, comments, complaints?
I hear none.
I don't hear any either. I'm listening though. Somebody's got to stump me. Well, anybody who has comments, concerns, questions, what have you, are numbers at the top of page 1. And just ask for me, I'm the good looking.
Shayna has a comment.
I'll just take a moment to acknowledge and thank our finance director, Dimitri Protos,
Yes.
who really is the silent hero behind this work. He does a wonderful job managing our finances on a day-to-day basis. This, as the board is aware, has been another challenging year as it relates to our accounting system's ability to create the reports that are needed to produce this audit, which is why it is coming to you later in the season than it would normally. But Dimitri really has done a valiant effort of working with the auditors, working with the accounting system, the technicians to get this report done so that we could ensure we file it correctly with the state. Once the report has been filed with the state, we will then put the final copy of the audit up on the village website for residents to be able to access and review this clearly very highly engaging document that's presented.
He always presents it most fun way.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you to Dimitri. I see he's online, but or at least he's dialed in.
He's a man of few words. I don't expect him to
Mhm.
say anything in response.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
no action required by the board this evening, unless there were any specific comments that you had regarding the MD&A section. That is the only portion of the audit at which we have any ability to make any comments or contributions, and that's the narrative section that was noted that typically I draft together with Dimitri, just laying out what our budget and finance picture look like for the course of this particular fiscal year and what we are looking ahead to in the year ahead, current fiscal year that we are in. So nothing actionable for the board unless you had any specific edits to the MD&A. Otherwise, we will give the auditor the green light to file the report with the state probably as of tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, as soon as we have the
Thank you
signed
very
manager rep letter, Dana.
I'm on it, Bob.
Okay, you and I think Dimitri have to sign it now.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
As soon as we have
Okay,
that, we will file it. Okay. All right, thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we can move on to the Ad hoc Friendship Heights Sector Plan Committee presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Just a minute to get our technology going. Yep, ready. So thanks for having us. I'm Jonathan Halpern. My colleagues from the committee, Bill and Allison, are here as well. So with questions and comments, we'll both all field them as necessary. I think it makes the most sense probably to let me go through the presentation. If I confuse you, stop me and ask questions. But other than that, I might answer questions at the latter part of the presentation. So why don't we go ahead and just, I'll share what we want to share and then have discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and I'm not going to read to you. You can read faster than I can talk. So you can see what we're going to do tonight, these 5 points. You need to read them. Okay, next slide. So what's the current state of play? So we have had, I'm not sure how many conversations, but we've talked with John Ziegenheim a couple times, head of the Chevy Land Company. We have had various meetings with the county planning department folks. We've talked with the Friendship Heights Alliance people. We've talked with the Friendship Heights Village vice chair, I think, and a variety of and residents as well. And then we'll come to the survey. So that's a couple of things that are in this mix right now. I'll start by saying things are not super clear, right? This is not a straightforward set of numbers that is easily discernible and understandable. There's a lot going on. So the first couple of things there. So everybody I think knows that Amazon Fresh closed on very short notice and is gone. The disposition of that property and its use TBD. From the folks at the land company, they were not particularly given a lot of notice. The Saks situation also is complicated there. The lease, as we understand it, was signed in the 60s, and it's a 100-year lease. So it's got a bit still to run. Obviously, with the sector plan, it takes time too, so that that's not so far out in terms of sector plans. The structure of that relationship now involves Hudson Bay, which is a large Canadian mall developer, real estate developer, and Saks has gone bankrupt. So I don't know exactly what that means within the Hudson Bay ecosystem, their business, but it's another, certainly a wrinkle there. And as we understand it, there's not much negotiating room for the land company and Saks in terms of adjusting the price that Saks is paying for the lease, et cetera. So the land company's got 2 challenging situations on its hands. Also important, and we'll get into a little bit more about what, but the Geico space, much larger space, but the county identifies that, I forget exactly the terminology they use, but available or something like that. But that, that space that they see that can be used for other purposes than it's currently being used. The parking lot has a lot of space around Geico. Geico has left. The disposition of that space, not totally clear. I think our sense at the moment from what we've heard is that the focus will be residential, building residential accommodations in that property. Lots of details there. So where's the county at? When I say the county, I'm speaking of the planning board. That was the folks that we've been dealing with. So first, I mean, they're well aware that that we're very interested in the disposition of what happens with the sector plan, even though there's physically a relatively small piece that adjoins the village. So and I think they've been quite interested in hearing from us in terms of talking with us and hearing feedback for what their thinking is. And I think it is still very much sort of in the thinking phase. They've done the visioning, it's moved into the next round, but I believe it's right to say they're not set on anything yet. Their focus, not surprisingly, is on density. They want to find, relative to the overall county plans, they want to find ways to house more people in this area, which also aligns with the idea if we want to have small shops and retail and make it a vibrant economic neighborhood, it does need to have people. County council elections are coming up. That's a significant issue for this fall. If the composition of the county council changes dramatically, the whole situation could change dramatically. So that's a significant issue that we should be really watching very carefully. We're not going to get into a lot of the detail, but zoning. The key takeaway from the conversations we've had and the presentations we've seen is that the first layer of zoning is not necessarily the most significant, right? There's the set zoning, and then there's an overlay to the zoning, and then there are exemptions to the overlay, and then there's questions about height and setbacks and amenities that get traded off for height. So it's in the detail, it's in the footnotes here, where attention really should be paid. One of the things that we have suggested is for the planning department to start to draw, somewhat like the earlier presentation here, so that it's not text and words, but show us what this option looks like, what this exemption would create, what this depth of overlay would look like, so that we can actually see it. I think there have been suggestions that we should continue very much working with, as much as possible, the planning department, but that there are more senior levels there that we would also be well advised to be in contact with. Not to go around, but to just engage in dialogue there too. So we've adopted a pretty collaborative approach with all the folks we're talking with. I don't think any of us were here for the prior sector plan. I certainly wasn't. It has a history that carries on, and I think there is an opportunity to not go necessarily in that direction, and we'll see what happens. But at the moment, the idea of transparency and collaboration seems to make a lot of sense. I mentioned density as a key piece, so I think that covers most of that slide. So we go on to the next one. Okay, so everybody knows that we did a survey. I suspect everybody's actually seen it, so we don't have to describe it to everybody. We intentionally used a bunch of images. We also, if you need to review of the questions, which I don't think we need to do, but I can stop if people would like to read them. I think we can probably, unless anybody wants me to slow down, we can probably go on. And so we asked a series of questions, some of which were about knowledge, and engagement, some of which were about concerns and preferences, and some of which were not exactly technically demographic, but that kind of information. So we know who's responding. So you can see up here, we had 625, the end, the sample size, 625 folks, which out of a community that's got, I may get this wrong, Shannon, correct me, 1,700-ish people, but 1,900-ish people, okay. But I think about 700, that's where I got the 7, I think 720 actual houses.
Yep.
So 600 is not a bad number. And it also gives us the opportunity to do some crosstabs, because even, I'll talk to this particular slide in a minute, even with that 10%, that's 60-ish people. So that's enough to sort of see what they're thinking about. So the first, if we can stick with that first question for a minute, can we go back for a second? Right. So it's a pretty clear slide, right? 90% of the folks that responded to the survey don't know much about the sector plan. That's a significant number. So if we now go on to the next slide. Next question is, how important do you think it is to be engaged in this process? I'll give you again a minute to just look at it. But in terms of
Give me too far back. Can you give me percentages?
yeah, sure. So the overall percentage that I was going to mention, which is good to do now, is that people who think that's either very important or important total up to 81%. So that's also a very high number. So very much not informed, very much desiring to be engaged. And engaged, I'll just note, we can go back to details. Engaged does not necessarily mean taught or talked to. Engaged is a very particular, we use that intentionally. It wasn't like, do you want to know more? It was, do you want to be engaged in the process? Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to put up a couple pieces of this, and this is something we use with our commercial clients, and it's, I think, useful, and I think it's really appropriate here, so I'll walk folks through it. It talks about the knowledge journey, and our view is that basically everybody's on a knowledge journey, because we're all sharing what we know with other people all the time. So if we can click on the next one. So we all start out in life and in lots of situations not knowing what we don't know. So we're unconsciously ignorant. And it's kind of a scary place because, you're sort of lost. But as the, don't go too fast. You travel, right? So you begin to learn more. And then if we click on the next one, it's a big step. You go from being unconsciously ignorant to consciously ignorant because you have the opportunity to learn. You know now what you don't know, which creates all kinds of opportunities. Over time, you go over to the next cube and click through, consciously expert, right? So people are top of their field. They're very sensitized to what they know, what they learn, what the key principles are, et cetera, et cetera. So our folks are not, the residents here do not want to become experts in the stuff that we're talking about. But they do start from a place of not knowing what's really going on. If you go up into the next 2 clicks, right, at the very top, you're beyond. It's actually hard to communicate because it's just like breathing. So again, our residents don't need to get there, but if we can click the next one and then one more, yeah, right. So they do, people do want, as we interpret it, understand it, want to move from not knowing to being engaged. Now, again, that's not being talked at, that's not being, having lots of information come their way and have to absorb it, but engagement. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So I'll give you a minute to look at it, but this is the, what do people say are their most important and their least important priorities? I'll give you a minute. That's a little bit complicated. So I'll walk us through. That. This is just a really. Yeah. Okay, so a couple things just to note. Mostly we have percents, but here it's not percents. It's actual numbers of respondents, right? 300, et cetera. The ranking was not from important, very important, very important, very important, very, very, very important. It was from very important to not, right? So it's a bigger spectrum than one might imagine. So that's really, so the 5 is indicating something that's not even close to 1. It's something much less important. That's an important thing to know. Okay, so if you look at it and evaluate it, right? Green space, parks, walking areas is by far the highest, most ranked desire as being important. If you add up in the third cluster, the first 2 bars, the blue and the red there, that's the second most oft ranked desire is small neighborhood retail shops. You can see certainly the purple bar at the end, which is, it's not necessarily better or higher because it's higher bar. What that means is the vast plurality relative to housing indicate that it's something that's much less important. Now, for a sample, for a survey of people who have a place to live, not exactly a shot. That's not a priority. So what the other ones are, though, makes a big difference in terms of how we express the village's desires and how they are received. And this is where there is, the county notion of density and this set of data. Those are, let's just say they're not completely aligned at the moment. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So now we flip it, right? So we asked about priorities and preferences. Now we ask the other side of what are you most concerned about that might happen in that space that we've been talking about? Significant plurality, the 45%, say the character of the village. Now, I suspect if we went around here and asked what's the key factor of the character of the village, I'm not sure we would all say the same thing. So that's a complicated term, a complicated, somewhat ephemeral thing to define. We intentionally did not go there in this survey. If we want to, in a future effort, we could probably tease out, we might not do it the same way, but we could probably tease out more what are the key contributing attributes that people that imbue that word with meaning. So the second key point here is that loss of green space, right, is not surprising. That is a significant concern at 23%, so a quarter. Interestingly, though, the other significant concern, same amount as with green space, more cars and parking in the village. That's logical. It's interesting, though, so I call everybody's attention to the fact that more cars, pretty high concern. Pedestrians, not so much. So sometimes pedestrians can be in cars, they cannot be, right? I mean, but that's something that going forward, how that gets addressed makes a difference in terms of threading those concerns and the ranking of those concerns. Okay, next slide. So you can see what the question is. You can see the basics of the answers. So net, people stick around, and it's not easy to access. You can see the more than 11 to 20 years. If you add up those two, that's a big chunk of the response group. Okay, go to the next slide. So this was combination. We asked people the ages of the people in their household, and then to total the number of people in the household. So again, if you look, there's a lot of different ways you can break up these numbers. You can see that the 41 to 65 is plurality of those responses in terms of the ages of folks in the village. If you then add that and say 41 plus, now you're at 50, almost 60%, 58%. So that's a significant majority. Important, though, to note that the 65 and over number is the same as the 7 to 17 number, right? Which, and 7 to 17 over time, right? At 18 to 28, not so much, right? So the number of people in those households also change. There's a little bit, I'm quite confident of all the numbers, and there's a little bit of user, I won't say error because that's not right, but some of the folks we know didn't count themselves. They counted the other people in the family gave their age. So, and we know that the people under 6 were not filling out this form, right? But it's fundamentally solid. Okay, if we go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each one of these, don't worry. But I want to use it as an example. Because we had such a significant number of respondents, we're able to do crosstabs. So we can look at the relationship of people, say, knowledgeable, not knowledgeable. We can look at age groups, et cetera. We can look at years in the village, et cetera. So the key takeaway here, there are, if you analyze this very closely, there are some variations between the knowledgeable and the overall group, but they're not huge. They're not huge. They're not statistically insignificant, but they're small. So number one, on both categories, in both the knowledgeable and overall, it's green space again. And we know that we asked, that's got 3 parts: green space, parks, and walking areas. And so that's a little bit heavier than places to eat. But the reality is those things are all come together. It is a package. When you get one, you get the others most likely. Second is shops. Third place kind of runs across, not really clear, which makes sense because that's kind of the middle number anyway. It's not really important, it's not really unimportant. And then playgrounds, 4th, and housing, again, we've seen before, 5th. But you can see from the purple, knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, it's not a big jump. So we go to the next slide. What does this all mean? Couple things. Okay, I'll let you read for a minute and then I'll elaborate. Okay, so despite a variety of ages, numbers of peoples and families, etc., it's commonly held opinions. The village doesn't speak in one voice, but it does speak in a coherent, common voice on these kinds of questions. The variations are not big. I mentioned, but to reiterate, uninformed want to go to engagement. Again, what the definition of that is another conversation. The green part's walking. That is the biggest priority. I mentioned the cars as a concern that's greater than people. The culture question of what gives the village its special culture. And certainly in the planning department and some of the other meetings, people do talk pretty consistently about, well, the village is unique for this reason. The village is unique for that reason. That's a key part of how we're perceived, and I think how we perceive ourselves. The next point there is a sort of a thought, consider, right? So previously, the word in play was buffering, right? Maybe that's the same word that should be in play now, or maybe things have shifted somewhat on a lot of different levels, that it's about transitioning. But how does one manage that in-between space that is right at the village and at the Saxon Land Company's border or boundary? And if it's transitioning, it's really a question of what they call the overlay, which is how high can something be that abuts the village, and how much depth needs to be between that place where it abuts the village and where it can start. That calculation is key. Okay, the last 2 points. As I said, it's not clear that, well, it is clear actually, that not everybody's aligned on this, right? We know that. Whether it's possible to create an approach and a solution that meets most, not all, of the stakeholders' core requirements, understanding the trade-offs would be part of that conversation. It's possible, I think. I don't know that, but I think it's a possibility. Okay, I think that's the core there. If we go to the next slide. So what's next? And I'll let you read for a moment. So we added, that's the county's time, and we added the election. I mentioned how important I think that is. The timelines that had been originally set slipped for, I don't know exactly why, but for somewhat predictable reasons, and they could well again, and the elections again are a big factor. But excuse me, that's what's coming up next. In terms of other aspects of what's next, go to the next slide. So we need to do another round of interview/conversations. They're really more conversations now. We want to share with the CCLC these findings that we've shared with you. We've encouraged them, I think, in a collaborative and open spirit to also please share what they have been developing. We are aware that they have not submitted a formal proposal to the planning department, but that they have some drawings. Okay? I don't think they're back of the envelope. We've had a good conversation with John about this, but they're not ready enough that he felt fully comfortable to share them with us. We're hoping that when we share this with him in our next conversation, which I think we have a date for in sometime later this month, I think, for that meeting. This was Shana's suggestion, I think, actually. I think it's a great idea to have a working session with folks from the planning department, the committee, and the board to talk through some of these things in a way that's not, but it's a working session so that we can really, and one of the images that we used was Lego on different parts of a map. I'm not suggesting we do that again, but that kind of discussion, everything's sort of on the table and we talk it through. We will come to you with recommendations. And the fruit card is just a reminder, as much as to me as anyone else, that we not only get, Bill, you had said this, we get more than one bite at the apple. We actually get a bunch of bites. So it could be a bite of a pear, it could be a bite of an orange. There's a number of opportunities. It's not a one and done. So let's see, other things on this one. Well, the things to watch for, the DC plan, what DC's doing on the other side of Western is a factor, especially related to Geico, but also in terms of what happens to what's now, I guess, what's it called, Chevy Chase. Yeah, Pavilion, right. What happens to that space? What happens to this, to the height going a little bit further south down Wisconsin, and the CCLC leases. You know, that's a big factor here. There are a number, or at least one. I don't always get this right, so I'm going to be careful. There is an submitted and approved project for above Brooks near the Marriott. But that does not, as I understand, have financing. I think there is another project that is in a similar category, but I might be wrong on that, so we would need to double check that. And the planning department has additional presentations and discussions planned for the community. The next slide. So I mentioned that this is the engagement is not teaching, and to the extent that the county and the land company can show and They're doing as also enhancing the culture of the village, not hurting it, not cutting it off. But if they can think about that and put that into their plans, the culture piece is essential. And I think that's it. So, questions, thoughts?
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yes,
That
thanks.
was sure wonderfully informative, and it's clear the committee's done an enormous amount of work and stayed on top of this. So thanks for that. Earlier, you mentioned that there were different points of view, and I think you meant the village versus other stakeholders. It was an earlier slide, and could they come together? So I'm assuming that you meant other stakeholders in the process, and I was just curious as to what the big gaps are. Like if the village point of view comes across as one thing, what are others saying that's significantly different?
Well, density, 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 right? That, and that's the county, not so much as I understand it. And we have not done a survey. We haven't talked extensively with people in the Friendship Heights community, et cetera. But the need to, the need to bring people into the area, and the complexity of, you make it a destination, right? That's something that has all sorts of ring to it, that has, very, that's mentioned, been mentioned a bunch of times in the various presentations from the planning folks as a destination. It's one way to bring people, maybe. Housing, bring people to live here, is another way. And to get people, which are required for the creation of commercial shopping, little shops, neighborhood stores, that kind of stuff, one way or another, got to have people. So the option of having office space also be a source for bringing people during the day. I mean, it's pretty, I mean, Allison, you know more about design, but it's a pretty common mixture that enables communities to survive. My sense at the moment is that the idea of office space, probably not a big seller. And I think the folks in general, and I think the county and the land company are both of the mind that that's not going to be the key to the solution of getting people here. I think the folks in Friendship Heights understand that the Geico, and particularly all along Willard, that's already got significant building, and that's going to be a place that is further developed.
And probably more immediately. It sounds like the Saks could be on a very slow
Yeah.
schedule versus across Wisconsin will happen much quicker.
I think that's right. I think the other thing that folks have said to us in different ways, but it's consistent, which is that if you think of Wisconsin Circle or Clyde's as the high point where bigger buildings would go, but from that high point, things like if you imagine a tent pole, things then slide lower going north up through the Saks parking lot and going east toward the village. But the high point is on Wisconsin, basically at Clyde or Wisconsin Circle. And then it goes down from there. Now, there's a whole set of conversations that I don't really understand. It's a 45-degree angle, how that works, but that's really important. Because
Right.
they can say easily, oh, that it's, the zoning is this and there's an overlay, but it's, blah, 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 blah. But how the details of that, and it's not a huge thing, but it is important. I mean, people, our other residents, I mean, don't think in terms of in terms of like, oh, it's 100 feet. How many stories is that? Right? The property
Right.
people think that way, but that's not super useful to engage people because they have to translate and try and figure it out. So the more we and other folks can speak a language that is really clear, people will engage.
But in terms of what happens in the sector plan, most of what's going to happen most immediately is on the other side of Wisconsin, not the part that's adjacent to Chevy Chase Village.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Right, what could happen. But Chevy Chase Land is going to approach this side of Wisconsin as a piece, I would think. And Saks has a lease through.
I think it's worth noting that. Would you mind speaking to the microphone? Only
Yeah.
because we do have very interested attendees
Yeah.
attending virtually.
I think it's worth noting that Hudson Bay's interest in Saks is intentionally designed to have a front row seat to this type of scenario. So Hudson Bay is a developer and Saks is a retail business with ownership of well-positioned real estate. And so I think it's really important to note that it's not immediate, and CCLC is calling it a 25-year plan in conjunction with what's going on with the county. So they are very much saying that it's long-term and not short-term. And I think there's a level of reassurance that because the leverage lies with Saks in terms of the way the lease is structured and the length of it, it's actually it's shorter than 100 years, but it has 2 renewal options. So they have the option to renew twice, and that's for the parking lot and the building. But I think the piece of it that's worth keeping in mind that could or maybe could not, but depending on the county and a lot of other factors, the office demand in the region, it could be accelerated by Hudson Bay's interest in that lease and that space. And there's sort of a third party in the room now that is not Saks and is not CCLC. That's a very real estate driven and real estate educated third party.
Interesting. Lots of things in play. This was great. So do you want anything from the board? A sense
At
from
this
the board?
point, we don't have an action item.
Right.
We have a bit more work to do, and then we need to give you recommendations.
Yeah, I will just say that I bet an active play space is of more interest to people that maybe didn't answer the survey.
Say that one more
It,
time.
having a more active play space
Mhm.
in that transition area. Say Saks did get developed in some way, and there was a buffer between, that it would be great for the village to have a walkable, more active play space. And yeah, everybody's worried about the tree canopy and the parks, but there aren't very many people in our parks. We have not active parks. They're parks that get walked by and driven by. But every 5 years, people come to the board and say, we really need an active playground in walking distance. So I think it's maybe how the question gets phrased.
Yeah, and we put playground as its own category, which that could be mixed differently. But I think this is, if we go forward with the idea of a working session, this conversation with a carefully planned agenda so that
Yeah.
all of these things come
Yeah.
up is really valuable.
Yeah, I think that a play space in that transition area where everybody knows it's not taking one of the parks that you've already decided you didn't want to be a playground. It's a new thing that we haven't had before.
So we, in the throwing spaghetti on the wall style, we've tossed out all kinds of ideas, but one could daylight potentially Little River, one of the tributaries to Little Falls, and have a little bit of water going, goes under Wisconsin, so.
Wow, interesting.
But that's spaghetti. That's in the world of
Well,
spaghetti.
this is fun. Let's do some more spaghetti sometime soon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We move on?
We can, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge and thank Mr. Halpern, who's
Yeah.
been a wonderful chair of this committee and has wonderful committee members, and Allison DeGiovanni and Bill Van Horn. They have been meeting weekly, and in some weeks more than once each week.
It's
going
impressive.
through all of
Everything
this.
you've learned and done.
Yeah.
We're really appreciative.
They've really worked very hard, have dove into this, made a lot of really key connections and relationships to foster the collaboration, as Mr. Halpern was noting. And I just think it's important for the board to know that they really have been working very hard.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
we have a comment.
Hi, I'm Diane Cartalia. I've lived in the village 45 years, April 10th of this year. I think you did a fabulous job. I mean, such complications and such opportunities that have just never gotten there. And that, this could be very exciting. I do think the village and the committee have to take a look at the Montgomery County economic policies that have depressed the success of Friendship Heights Village. So Montgomery County moving Marriott to Bethesda, I mean, that was Upper Bethesda, moving, I believe it's JBS to out of Chevy Chase, and now Geico, leaving. I love that building. I'm sorry to see it go. So we are fighting other elements, and I think that has to be part of it. Being wild, I think we need I think Friendship Heights Alliance should be an economic development board or another one. We need investment in Friendship Heights. Anyway, so I think that's a factor to the success. Thanks. I think you did it fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next complicated matter, which is our pending legislative matter of the state Starter and Silver Homes Act. Michelle's going to brief us.
Thank you. As happened last year, this year, the governor is again endorsing a housing bill that has really, really sweeping ramifications statewide. And the major provisions include definitions that define a single family dwelling unit as both a single family detached house as well as a townhouse, as long as there's 3 townhouses in a row. And what the bill does is prohibit any jurisdiction from requiring a lot size larger than 5,000 square feet in any zone that allows single-family detached housing by right. In this case, you, of course, have R60 zoning, a minimum 6,000 square foot lot. If this bill is adopted, the minimum lot size throughout the village would become 5,000 square feet. If you're in a 9,000 square foot minimum lot size, it's 5,000 square feet. If you're in a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, it's 5,000 square feet per single family home, which includes both a townhome and a single family detached. If Those townhomes are developed under a condominium regime as opposed to fee simple. There is no maximum density imposed under this bill. The bill also, at the moment, imposes minimum front and back setbacks of 20 feet, minimum side setbacks of 5 feet, and eliminates maximum lot coverage, and additionally has other limitations on building code provisions, building development standards that would be overridden by the state law. So it changes zoning standards statewide in a way that's really, really unprecedented. It's highly troubling because it preempts local jurisdictional authority over zoning, which of course is one of the core functions typically exercised by local jurisdictions. It has been supported by MACO. There's been support with amendments. MACO has recommended some fairly sweeping amendments. The Maryland Municipal League as well has endorsed it with amendments, changing its original recommendation to oppose. Just this afternoon, late this afternoon, we learned that the Maryland Municipal League has recommended exempting municipalities from the bill entirely. Needless to say, I expect that we will be adopting that position. The bill is going to be subject to a public hearing in the House Economic Committee on Thursday and in the Senate Economic, Environmental, Energy Committee a week from Thursday. There are various proposed amendments by many, many county, local, and other jurisdictions throughout the state. We're kind of in a state of flux right now and trying to react quickly to a bill that really has significant implications. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thanks for that. So that you probably know that that's why we had our special meeting to get our act together quickly, and we hired a lobbyist. We've been working with Michelle and other little municipalities nearby that have, similar demographics. And we feel pretty good about, right now, as of today, pretty good about supporting with amendments MML's thing, which says we're exempt. So
Correct.
that's kind of the position of the board right now, I think, right?
That's
You
part
wanna-
of what we need to,
Yeah,
to
we're-
just confirm this evening is that the board supports, our lobbyist has recommended that getting behind the weight of the Maryland Municipal League, which of course is echoing the recommendation from MACO, which is the Maryland Association of Counties, to simply just exempt the Maryland municipalities as being their recommendation. It's a bit of a misnomer, but essentially in order to have a seat at the table before these legislative committees, you have to go in stating that you are favorable with amendments. Favorable does not mean that you favor the content of the bill. It just means that you have an opportunity to speak before the legislature or to submit written testimony before the legislature to relay your specific request for amendments. And so with consultation from our lobbyist and our zoning attorney, we are recommending that we submit written testimony that would state favorable with amendments. Again, keeping in mind that that phraseology is a misnomer, but that would support MML and MACO's amendments to exempt municipalities from the effects of the proposed legislation.
Yeah, that was the late breaking thing. Anybody have any comments about or questions about? We have to put something in writing by tomorrow at 6 p.m. to them, right? Correct?
I would love to see that. Yes, I would certainly love to see that, but is that at all realistic?
It's a starting point.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
We're armed with other backup plans.
We're starting here, and Michelle has wonderful ideas, which
And,
we
and
don't.
I will say that we have met, several of us have met with both the lobbyist as well as some representatives from another municipality, with representatives from the state's Department of Housing and Community Development and DHCD. And we had proposed some amendments that informally at the table to say, with respect to lot coverage and tree canopy coverage and that kind of thing. And they clearly indicated a willingness to work with various jurisdictions. They would like to go in with some amendments that they're looking to get support from various jurisdictions. So I do see this as a dialogue, as an opportunity to try and negotiate. But with MML coming out with such a strong position of exempting municipalities, it certainly gives us a lift under our wings.
Do we, this may be getting ahead of things, is there a vote count on the committees of who might be supportive or who might be willing to offer the amendment, since MML's not, on behalf of the MML?
I would say the answer is no. I would say that the people who have spoken directly with the members of the General Assembly, those members have been very coy. They really have not been willing to show their hand one way or the other.
Have we directly talked to any of our 3 delegates or our senator with respect to specifically about the MML amendment?
This amendment just came out.
Okay.
6 people.
About
Oh,
2
okay.
hours ago.
Right.
So this is all
Yeah,
very
that might
new.
be helpful, yeah.
So this is all very new. And so one of the things that the District 16 and District 18 delegations have relayed to municipal officials is that they recognize that this bill is very controversial. And even in the 2 committees of jurisdiction that this will be heard in, there were legislators during a recent briefings who noted the preemption, that this is kind of unprecedented level of local preemption,
right,
and that was concerning. And I think that's also why you're seeing statewide a very strong reaction from local governments to this. There has been prior legislation proffered by the governor's office that was not as sweeping and was not on its face an attempt at local preemption. The governor's staff and staff from the Department of Housing and Community Development have not shied away from the fact that that is indeed the goal here, is local preemption. But they believe there is a greater good to be achieved via this preemption. So I think that the strength of us getting behind these larger representative bodies, the 2 large representative bodies of local governments, the Association for Counties and Municipalities that represent the state, will put us in a very good position. But we certainly recognize that there's a larger aim here, and so we'll still be working on other amendments to foster that backup plan should an effort at full exemption not succeed.
Yeah. The idea would be to weigh in favor of the MML amendment tomorrow and be all over this and be ready for whatever happens, which we don't know what that is yet.
And there still is 6 weeks in the session, right? More.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more.
60 some days.
Anyone have any?
So we have a sense of the board in support for this plan of action.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Much easier presentation as of 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
It was otherwise gonna
Yeah,
be.
we were going line by line and then MML emails saying, this is what we suggest. And we're like, oh, okay.
I like it. Bold.
Okay, so next is a contract authorization for street maintenance.
Hi, yes. So I come before you this evening for our street maintenance and repair services contract. So back in January, I submitted to the e-Maryland Marketplace our invitation for bid this contract. And the bid package went out to over 177 people or companies that listed that they were roadway paving services. Out of those 177 bidders, we received 3 bids. Of the 3 bids, we received 2 complete bids. And then I went ahead and looked over the bid tabulation sheet. I contacted all the references. And after looking through it all, I gave it over to Shayna, and we made the decision to offer, well, we're waiting for you to approve and offer to Espina Paving to be our new street maintenance and repair services contract.
Just to add, this is an on-call contract, so this establishes the rates that will be used when we need street maintenance work to be done. That's part of why we typically see a lower number of bids in spite of the number of contractors that get access to this request for bids, because it's on-call services for a very small municipality. It's not a guarantee of a lot of work. The references that Jackie spoke to for Espina were very positive and glowing about working with the contractor. We have not worked with this contractor previously, but we're encouraged by the feedback we received from the references.
Okay, so do we have a motion
I
on
move
this?
to authorize the village manager to enter into a contract in substantially the form provided and subject to review by the village council with Espina Paving Incorporated for the performance of street maintenance services for an initial term of 3 years with the option to extend the contract 2 additional 1-year terms.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, so that passes. So we're on item 7, the police report. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. For the month of January, we had a larceny where I couldn't confirm that a package was removed from the porch out of a unit block of Hesketh on January 2nd. The only thing we could confirm, it was ordered, said it was ordered, but never came. So we're making the assumption it was taken from our porch. We had a domestic related assault in the 100 block of Hesketh, a family dispute. Could not verify injuries. They were given the information regarding both criminal and civil proceedings moving forward. Administrative wise, we have 1 opening. We had an interview with a young man yesterday, the day before yesterday. He'll be in the applicant process, the background process now, so we'll see where we are going with that. Again, we are in the middle of our senior self-defense classes. Due to the weather, we had to push them back to finish on March 11th. The female self-defense class begins February 25th. We still have openings. We're about halfway full. So please share that and see if we can fill all those slots. We had the police plunge held on January 30th. That was a good time as usual. A little chilly. I had the super plunge prior to that, the weekend before that, which was probably the worst experience of my life. It was awful.
Do you mind explaining to anyone who doesn't know what a super plunge is, exactly what that?
Sure. Super plunge is for Special Olympics. We went in 24 times in 24 hours. So every hour on the hour from Friday morning to Saturday morning, we went in the water.
This was the Friday before the snow.
This is Friday before the snow, 8 degrees, and then wind chill to somewhere about 10 below. So I will fess up about 2 or 3 in the morning to hit my knees, and I was right back inside because the wind was so strong it blew the heaters out in the tent. So we'd come back inside, and you could see the breath sitting down in the tent. So it wasn't a whole lot of difference between the 2 environments. I said that was going to be my last, but we call it the power of the athlete, and my athlete convinced me to do it one more time next year. So you'll see the fundraising begin again anew. Other than that, as we all know, we have a ton of snow and ice outside. And residents who cleared spots in the street to get their car out and to help us be able to get curb to curb clearing, we appreciate you. And we applaud your ingenuity in getting your car piled out, but we can't let you own that spot. We've had some folks run across cones that are put in the public right of way to hold their spot that they rightfully so cleared. But as much as I kind of agree with the concept, it is still against the law to block up a public right of way. So please don't put cones out there. We'll move them. We see them again, we'll take them. You have to go spend another $40 on cones. So that's it, unless you have anyone has questions.
Thank you very much.
What a great place for me to pick up on with snow and ice. So just to give the board an update for our winter storm continued cleanup. We are, of course, monitoring and praying for higher temperatures so that we can start to get some melting. But in the interim, we are continuing to open up intersections and roadways to get them as wide as we possibly can. It's a fine balance because, of course, while we are trying to push the snow and ice off of the road, of snow onto what have now been cleared sidewalks. So it is slow going. It's a finessing operation. We also realize that the effort of trying to relocate snow is more time consuming than it is to just try to work within the adjacent public right of way. In order for us to put snow onto the backs of trucks to then transport it to a park or green space to unload it, it just takes an inordinate amount of time that we lose in just moving the snow and ice out of the roadway. We may get to that point at some point in our cleanup efforts, but we're not there yet. So we are continuing to hold in one of the 2 contractor units that we brought in immediately following the storm to have them continue to assist us in digging out specific areas. As luck would have it, the tractor, which is the main device that we use to widen the roadway, now has a connection issue where one of the hydraulic lines has severed, and so we can no longer lift the bucket on our tractor. We have rented 2 Bobcats, and we may be getting another piece of equipment to assist from that contractor in place of our tractor. We think we've basically just used it to the point where the hydraulic line has broken. So we're still managing along. It is slow going. Our plan has been to prioritize those streets where we see high volumes of traffic or on-street parking. In some instances, it is requiring us to coordinate with abutting residents to get parked vehicles moved off of the street. We do still have a lot of residents who are out of town, and so there have been some vehicles that we simply just have not been able to get moved out of the way. So you may see some areas where there's kind of an odd snowbank around a parked car. We would love to work with the owners of those vehicles to get them moved, but that's just not always the case. So there's a lot of coordination with neighbors. There's a lot of kind of moving parts here, but we are slowly chipping at it. I'm thankful to say that as of Saturday, we did get the Brookville Road sidewalk fully open. That was a big task for us and something that was probably the most challenging span of sidewalk following this event, because it was the direction that SHA, the State Highway Administration, plowed all of the snow and ice off of Brookville Road. And then, as many of you know, there's privacy fences along most of that span of sidewalks. There was quite literally nowhere else for that snow and ice to go. So our contractor did a wonderful job with that. I also just want to note and thank our residents who responded to our outreach about sidewalk clearing. As we announced last Wednesday, that we were going to commence sidewalk clearing enforcement for those residents who live adjacent to a public sidewalk. We identified about 30 households that had not either made an effort at cleaning or not completely cleared the sidewalk adjacent to their home by Friday. So Wednesday through Friday, 3 days later, we had 50% compliance from those households, which was amazing. And then the remaining households had indicated to us from our outreach that they would be contacting the resources that we made available to them or others to make some headway over this past weekend and then going into this week. So we're really, really happy with the progress that was made there. I think that generally our residents were appreciative of our approach, which was that we recognized this was a unique storm. We did not begin enforcement immediately after the event. We gave people time, and then once we began enforcement, we did have resources available to share with them of individuals and companies that could help them dig out. So I want to thank Aurelio Baca-Asher, our permitting code enforcement coordinator, who made the rounds to identify the locations and to Jennifer Young, who has done a valiant effort in reaching out together with Aurelio to those residents, connecting them with the resources that they would need, and also following back up with them this week to start thanking them for clearing those sidewalks as well. So I think we're in a really good place, really appreciative of the response that we got from residents, but just wanted to give the board an understanding of where we are.
Thank you.
Sure. And one other thing to add, because all of the fun with the governor's bill was simply just not enough. As the board knows, we've also introduced legislation regarding the village's municipalities' ownership of the streetlight networks within our jurisdictions. This was a bill that was originally entered in 2023 that did not complete its time through that session. There were several provisions of that bill that needed to be updated based upon the last 2 years worth of negotiations with PEPCO. Sue Ellen has put together a series of amendments that will be entered as friendly amendments to the 2023 version of the bill. The bill had first reader last week, and we are waiting for committee assignment and hearing date. Although now I think about it, I did not get the chance to look today, so I don't know if you saw. Okay. So we will probably be leaning upon Mr. Crockett again to testify on behalf of the village in support of that bill when it comes up for a House committee session. It was not, today was the deadline for cross-file bills to the Senate side. We did not find a senator to sponsor a cross-file bill. That is okay. Bills can still make their way through the session without needing a formal cross-file. And so we will see how the bill works its way through the House. Hopefully we get broad support in hopes that we can try to bring some of these issues with our ownership of the streetlight networks to final conclusion in this session. So was there anything that you wanted to add about that bill?
No, I think you
Okay.
summarized it well.
And then, of course, the partner effort to that legislative effort is that we have filed, as you know, a complaint with the Maryland Public Service Commission, also challenging some of the requirements that PEPCO is placing on municipalities for our streetlight ownership. We have received a hearing date. We're actually looking to get that moved so that we can make sure that works for the internal schedules of the people who need to be present and active on that. So hopefully we will get a new date for that PSC hearing for some time this spring so that we will truly have full conclusion to all things streetlights. So anything
Yeah.
else you want to add on that?
Thank
Other than
you.
our rolling eyes, we'll leave it there.
Thank
It's
you.
been quite a saga.
Conclusion would be nice.
Thank you all.
Absolutely. Nothing else to add unless there are any questions.
Hearing none.
Okay, well, it's been difficult enough to move outside, but I'm especially pleased that in here, I can move to adjourn.
Okay.
Excuse me, excuse me.
Oh, yes, hello.
I thought there was going to be an issue about 15 West Lenox that was on the agenda. Is that no longer
No.
on the agenda? The tree
Not on the-
removal? That's
Yeah,
why I've been hanging on this whole time.
Yeah, sorry, we posted an updated agenda this afternoon that case has been continued at the request of the applicants and will be re-noticed for a future board meeting agenda.
Okay, I would just simply ask as the neighbor, we're at 11 West Lenox, they're at 15. I thought there was, I've hung on to this meeting. By the way, I want to applaud everybody on the staff and the board of managers because you guys do great work. But I was under the understanding it was going to be on the agenda tonight. I would just simply ask if it's going to be forwarded to a future agenda that the contiguous neighbors be notified in advance. Hopefully it'll be available because I can tell you that some of us object to this plan to remove these trees, and it also flies in the face of the village standards when it comes to tree removal. So just want to say that I thought it was on the agenda, but if it's not tonight, I look
All right.
forward to discussing this at a future date.
Thank you. We did post an updated agenda, but I'm sorry that didn't get to the.
I didn't see it. I've gotten all the communication from the village, the letters, everything. I did not see anything. updating us, but that's okay. I understand. Just
All right.
want to note that several of the contiguous neighbors object to the removal of these trees, which also flies in the face of the village's tree plans when it comes to removal of trees. I'm done and we'll take it up at a future meeting. And thank you everybody for everything you're doing. We
Thank
love you
you.
guys and we appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. And the
I
meeting is
apologize. I'm usually
adjourned.
better at adjourning a meeting.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it.